Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to BatchMaster Software's webinar entitled BatchMaster Manufacturing for Food, where we'll be addressing the key processes and supporting software transactions for food manufacturers. My name is John Garcia. I'm the Director of Marketing here at BatchMaster Software, and I'm very happy to have George Yankovic, our practice leader, who will be joining me today. George will be diving down under the covers of our BatchMaster solution for food and presenting a number of those key essential features. Reason why we're having this conversation, it's because food manufacturing is a little bit different than normal process manufacturing, which is certainly different than discrete manufacturing. And the food properties itself kind of impact the software processes, the perishable aspect, expiration date, shelf life, the variability of the food inventory, and some of the certifications all impact formulation, production, inventory, quality, planning, scheduling, and compliance. And that's really the agenda for today. We'll be talking about each one of those processes, and as I mentioned, George will dive down and demonstrate some of the key transactions in that regard. Another area that food production impacts software is just in the steps itself. Taking in raw materials, going into WIP, creating intermediates, WIP again, and the opportunity or option, if you will, to produce byproducts and co-products that need to be managed. And some of the considerations during these production steps is blending the products or inventory that have variable characteristics. There are chemical reactions that occur, and so how does that impact the results? And as I said, the possible production of co and byproducts. Now, an example here, we're using all-purpose seasoning, and we're showing the hierarchy, if you will, of a recipe of a base or intermediate, which feeds a all-purpose seasoning, which then is packaged in a number of packaging configurations. So how does the software architecture support that type of multi-level bill of material? And the way it does it is creating individual intermediate recipes, finished good recipes, which are then linked to container and packaging bill of material. And they're all separate, and they could be mixed and matched together. And then within each record structure, you talk about the ingredients, you specify units of measure, weights and volumes, you embed QC and SOPs, you deal with labor, costs, and any type of certifications. And we address all of that within product development. And so during product development, there's some food-specific item characteristics that will impact your clean label. Okay, we're trying to ensure that you meet your label claim or target property values in terms of nutritional, physical, and costs. So we're integrated to USDA Genesis databases. We understand the differences in units of measure. We could employ theoretical properties. There's certainly variability, active versus fillers that we have to address. Certain certification like kosher and whether things are allergen. There's loss factors that will occur during production based on the item. And then there's, again, the valuation methods that, because it's an integrated system to your financials. Then from a recipe standpoint, there's serving sizes and loss factors that will need to adjust the recipe ingredient quantities as well. And then, of course, the recipe target property values in terms of nutritional, physical, and cost. And the point is that when you product development team goes and creates these recipes, that the system will alert you to out of tolerance conditions and will auto adjust the recipe to meet your target property values. And that means adjusting certain quantities. An offshoot of that is the system can actually generate your nutritional fact panels for you. So we're compliant with the various fact panel formats, as well as producing ingredient statements. So that's all user defined and has templates within the system. Now, once those formulas and you have a separate bill of material, your packaging department creates those BOM specifications. They're built together, and you can basically manage each step of your production as individual batch jobs, or you can link them together in what we term a super batch, in which it will link all of those together. So you basically start with what end result you want, and it back schedules all the particular batch jobs and steps. Now, when you do that, dealing with planning and scheduling, and that's both of production orders and any necessary purchase orders that need to support those production orders. So if you're familiar with MPS and MRP, we do provide those capabilities, as well as APS, which is more a granular control of those batch jobs. So basically, you're creating a various activity calendars based on the forecast horizons, and graphically, you'll see that within our APS as various blocks or cells, each linked together. And MPS, MRP, APS, the variability of your food product, your food inventory, definitely impacts planning and scheduling based on their properties, such as expiration dates, shelf life, allergens, kosher. All that comes into play as far as planning production orders and sequencing them, prioritizing them, and grouping them together. In an APS, obviously, one of the biggest things with allergens is to reduce the changeovers. And once you're into production, it's important to look at any time of WIP adjustments and the data collection that's being performed. And your available inventory during inventory allocation definitely can adjust your batch job recipe and packaging specifications. So your system needs to look at that and dynamically adjust those. And where does it do that? It could look at shelf life expiration for the allocation of specific inventory lots, the quality status, again, will impact the allocation, the variability based on strengths and potencies, whatever, that it may change the active and the filler quantities. And then, of course, if you're short, it can actually allocate a substitute product. And those, once allocated, the ingredients or packaging are pulled into WIP, and then our system can generate lot numbers, create the expiration date, shelf life, capture all the variability characteristics for both your intermediate, your co-products, your byproducts, and of course your finished goods. Now, to ensure that you're delivering, producing, I should say, high quality products, especially when you're trying to scale up production, we have a number of quality templates that you could use. And a lot of them are predefined based on the food industry. So we look at both inbound and outbound. We look at inventory in stock, and we look at WIP. And we have QC tests, checklists, inspection plans, and material or special instruction SOPs that all can be executed in each one of those areas. And when you do that and something is out of tolerance, you go through the QC, the QA process, and most importantly is you get the chance to rework production. And doing that, we look back at adjusting the batch job recipe, which is different than your standard recipe, and it will make the appropriate adjustments based on the QC results. And then from QA standpoint, whether you stock or ship it, it's the ability to have different quality grades and generate COA documents. And if you're in to advanced that's continuous improvement, CAPA, we've got a whole series of deviation, nonconformance, root cause analysis, corrective actions, preventive actions. That whole process is available within the system as well. Once it's out the door, certainly if you're dealing with FDA, FSMA, SQF, Advanced Food Safety Certification, BRC or SQF, it's important that you want to comply with product traceability and recall codes. And we do that. Not only do we capture lot numbers, but we can auto-generate the lot numbers along the way. And then we can go ahead and do bidirectional lot traceability in either direction, as well as generating the recall letter. So with that said, thank you for letting me kind of give you a snapshot of what George is going to dive into. Let me pass over the controls to George, who'll be demonstrating our application. Over to you, George.
Thanks, John. Here we are. I'm within our bills of materials, and just to get started so we can get a lay of the land and what kind of examples that we're going to talk about here. I've done a bill of material explosion for some cookies, and if I expand all of these, you'll see that our 8-ounce cookies and our 16-ounce cookies are an example of what a lot of food manufacturers run into, and that is product proliferation. You know, you want it in the 8-ounce, the 16-ounce, the 24-ounce, the family pack, whatever it might be. And as a result, it's really the same product, but it's packaged different ways. As a result of all of that, we split the bill of material from the formulation. So when we look at the formulation here for something, let's take a look at the bill of material first, and I'll open that up. Here's a bill of material for our 16-ounce cookies. You notice what it has on it? Simply the 8-ounce packaging and labels that go on. That's all. In that way, our formulation can stay the same, and anytime we change our formulation for whatever reason, we can just change the formulation, and however it is packaged, it's automatically changed as well. Okay. In this case, what we're doing is we're taking our cookies, taking 1 pound of each one of those cookies. That's probably incorrect because it should be 1/2 pound, and putting that into an 8-ounce pack. Okay, it should be the 16-ounce pack. We have this what's wrong here. Our demo data is a little off here, but you get the idea as well. So then when we looked at the actual formulation here, and I exploded the formula, you'll notice that this is everything that's made up of those particular cookies. Okay, and they can be in various different units of measure, in any different units of measure. In fact, that's one of the things that you'll want to look for in a process manufacturing solution, is the ability to really have all kinds of different units of measure. If I drill into our flour here, we'll see that when we purchased a flour, we actually purchase it in pallets, and there are 50 bags on each pallet. Each bag then is what we're going to pay for, and that then translates into how many pounds of flour that we have within inventory. Okay, and as a result, well, let me update this because we shouldn't have that checked. Thank you. And if I looked at my item master details for this item, you'll notice that we may have also a different production unit of measure here. We may have some lot strengths, which is another thing that will change along the way in food manufacturing. Maybe in some cases you have a stronger vinegar, or if you're in spices, there are spices that may change from stronger to weaker, and you need to adjust your formulas based on that. And I'll show you how to do that. We do that in a second. Okay. Here's a our unit of measure conversion, and we'll always present anything in terms of weights and volumes. That's another thing that's a little different in process manufacturing from discrete manufacturing. In this case, we did something very simple. We went from pounds to gallons with a conversion factor. But of course, we have the full complement of all of the global unit of measure conversions from kilograms to grams, etc., all the fixed ones that stay throughout the entire universe. Okay, so that allowed us to then function in a way where we can have various units of measure here and present the results of our formulation recipe in terms of pounds and weight throughout the entire process. We might also have other things that are a little different here. You may have consumables in making your products, things that are used in making the product but aren't in the product, like filters, sieves, gloves, hats, whatever adds cost to the product but aren't in the product. And of course, you may have various byproducts. In this case, we don't have any byproducts from our cookies, but you have any number of byproducts that come out of a given process. Okay. Another thing that is most important, shall we say, to the food industry is quality. You're all regulated by the FDA, and the mandates that are put on you are stringent. In this case, we automatically include all of our quality tests in any given formula and on any given item, and quality can be performed throughout the entire process. And we'll show you some of that a little bit later on as well. Each one of the results of those tests may be measured either numerically or alphanumerically or simple pass-fail tests. And you'll see those. Another thing you have to worry about are allergens. We'll track all the allergens and ingredients for any given formula as well. Okay. How does that all come about? Well, in the laboratory, here we are in physical property analysis, and you'll see that we have some problems with our physical properties. These are unlimited number of physical properties along the way. Whenever any of those physical properties are outside of the specifications for the given product, this is our cake dough as an example, the physical property will show up in red. In this case, we're looking for sodium to be in the range of no more than 480,000 units. Okay. Well, we're outside of all of that. We're just a little bit above it. What items relate to all of that? Well, these various items in various different ways. Obviously, salt is one of the largest ones, of course. Okay. And so if we want to, this relationship allows us to bring together all of this. So I can say, oh, I want to adjust my physical properties for this guy. What I'll do is I'll select the salt, and I want it to adjust salt. And I'll simply say I want this to be 479,000 units, keep it within spec. And when I change all of that, there we go. Our energy is still out of whack, but now our sodium is no longer out of whack, and we've also now changed the salt weights and volumes associated with that. So change your weights and volumes, it'll change your properties. Change your properties, it'll change the weights and volumes. They're all related. These now come from either the USDA database, or we have bidirectional integration with Genesis as well. So that's another way that you can do that. Okay. Now, obviously, all the allergens and stuff are in here, just like we talked about before. Okay. You may have other kinds of situations that happened as well. As a result of those relationships that we had in the laboratory, we can do all the nutritional labeling. So let's take a look at a nutritional label. Here's the selection criteria to generate our label. I'll do this for our cookies that are 16 ounce. Okay. And I'll say that we have 8 ounces in the container because that's what we had for our bill of materials. And our serving size is 2 ounces. And we'll just say go ahead and process that. I could do this for a whole range of products as well. And for all the FDA approved layouts for nutritional labels, and away we go. We get a nutritional label. Simple as that. We produce labels for all of the raw materials, all the packaging labels, all of the nutritional labels, we palletize license plates, hazardous material labels, all of that comes from the system as well. Now, when you get into production, all those physical properties, et cetera, come into bear as well. But as well, you may have situations in which you need to go through the entire process of making the product, meaning you'll make some sort of a component of the product, another component of the product, and bring those together into a bulk intermediate, perhaps, and another intermediate, perhaps, and then go to finally a packaged finished good. Well, in this case, we have an example of a super batch. A super batch is really batches within batches with batches, primarily for those people who are making products that are made to order. And in this case, we have this is being made for a specific sales order for a specific customer, and it's linked in with all of that. And we're making boxes of cupcakes, 50 boxes of them. If I looked at what the structure of that is, what we've actually done is generated 4 batches. In parallel, number 4, we're going to make the icing for the cupcake, along with the cake dough. And we just saw how the cake dough formulation looks and recipe. Right. Now, that then gets brought together to making the cupcake. And then we package that via an assembly process into our finished good, which is the cupcake box. So that's a super batch where everything ties together with all of this. If I were to drill into any one of these batches, then you can see that each one of those has the proper quantity. Let me go to the batch ticket itself. Has the proper quantity whereby in this situation what it's done is size the formula to what you need to do relative to the capacity of the material that it has, of the equipment that it's got to go through. So, for instance, if we had a mixer that we're sending our dough through, and we needed to produce 10,000 pounds of dough, but the mixer only had 1,000 pounds capacity, it would schedule 10 runs of that mixer to complete the batch. Okay, it would size the correct quantity associated with that in any unit of measure that you want. In fact, you can even toggle those units of measure along the way. This happens to be closed, so it's all grayed out right now. And as a result, we'll also keep track of what is the actual quantity that has been issued and the quantity to be returned if anything is left over along the way, along with losses at the individual ingredient level and losses at the formula level itself. In fact, there are more than one kind of loss on a formula. If we take a look at our cake dough, that's our active version of this, okay, and I take a look at the revision tab, you'll see that we have a yield that we're expecting and a loss factor. We might also have a constant loss, which is something that's not necessarily known in discrete manufacturing, where there's a certain amount that gets stuck in the container at the end of a batch, or a run out or something like that, where you always lose a certain amount left in the pipe or something like that. And then, of course, densities and specific gravities. And those are all handled through the item-specific unit of measure conversions that happen along the way. There may also be safety information that is needed throughout all of this. And that's tracked on the batch ticket as well, and through the formulation recipes that are in there. Okay? Now, those batch tickets may have variability in them. You notice that we had a required quantity and then an actual quantity on each one of these batches. Okay, now that whole super batch would flow through work in process in one continuous stream. That we need to make the icing and the dough to order to make a cupcake together, etc. in parallel. All of that would be scheduled together. In this case, we have a little something that's a little different. One of the other things that you face in a process manufacturing, and specifically in food. You may have different strengths of different ingredients that will then, based on the individual strengths of that particular ingredient, has to then change the formulation, the recipe for that particular product. So in this case, we're making some seasoning. Okay, it's a whole list of all the seasons, but we have this secret active ingredient that varies in its strength. And along the way then, if I were to look at that particular secret ingredient, you'll see that it might have some sort of a different lot strength along the way. Now, let's take a look at this when we actually start to do the batch. I'll right-click on this, and I'll start to allocate material to this batch. We can do soft allocation or hard allocation, and specifically we're ready specific items for that particular batch where you might be doing staging of the material at the beginning of a line, something like that. Here's our ground pepper, and you'll notice what it has done. It's taken this particular item and it's automatically allocated something based on what we set for that particular item. Okay? Also, when I look at my secret ingredient, I now have 3 different lots associated with that. And it's picking the first lot. Why is it doing that? If I drill into that item, and I take a look at the batch details for this item, you notice that what we are doing is we, first of all, expiration days, key in terms of all your ingredients and your physical products. Do I want to enforce raw material shelf life on the finished goods? What shelf life restrictions do I want to have? Shipment and purchasing, etc. Okay. How many quarantine days might I have? Now, when I'm going to use this material, this secret agent, how do I want to consume it? First in, first out, first expire, first out, or last in, first out? In this case, we said FIFO. So as a result of that, the system is presenting the available lots, and you notice this last lot is not available. It's locked because it has not passed QC yet. And we'll talk about that in just a little second as well. So here's my first lot. You notice that it has a certain quantity that's required because of my secret agent. That's because it has 100% lot strength. But if I were to check this lot and say I want to use this lot first, even though it expires later, and it has a 80% lot strength, you notice I'm going to use more of that lot than I will of the 100% lot strength. And of course, along the way here, then we're going to have a filler material. And if we allocate that filler material, now it's going to allocate more of that, or less of that, to take up for the weaker lot strength for the active ingredient that we have here. And so on and so forth. And that will carry on through, I'm not going to change all of this right now, that will carry on all the way through issuing material to the batch. Also, one of the things that John mentioned was the assignment of lot numbers automatically for lot traceability later on. You notice in this case, we're making our seasoning, it has already assigned a lot number with an expiration date, okay, based on that entire lot. But it doesn't have to be. Some of our customers will say, I want to have different lot numbers based on timing. So every 2 hours I want to have a new lot. Or based on the amount of material that's produced. So they might have a new lot number for each pallet that comes off the line, pallet of product. That way, if they have a problem with some packaging or something like that, they're not looking at recalling the entire lot, the entire batch. They can have some subset of what that is that is exposed to that recall and minimize their exposure that way. So we can break out this in any different ways that we want to. The end result of all of that is as we do all of these things, all the financials will be updated. We will then have the actuals that are actually going to be consumed along the way here, and actual quantity issued and returned, etc. Okay? Now, of course, whenever this happens, then automatically it's going to generate a QC order associated with this. And QC orders can happen at any given point in time. Okay? Any given point in time. Pre-delivered with the system are a set of tests that might be performed, which you can always add to, but it's all pre-delivered to you. If I were to look for batches, for QC orders, you can see they can happen at goods receipt. They can happen at any point in production, before or after sales, or at any point in inventory, and also stability testing, where you have retained stability samples, retention samples, and you want to test those periodically. You can set up a test schedule and periodically test them to make sure that either the lot strength or the integrity of the product is being held until at least the shelf life and or expiration date of the product. You may do all of that. Anyway, let me take a look at what might happen in all of this. Let's take a look at this quality control order again. Here's the same one that I had for the seasoning. Now you notice this is new. I'm going to go ahead and release this guy and update him. As a result of that, now I can start to say who's going to be in charge of this and what's going to be the primary person who's going to be doing the testing on this. I'm going to assign these to Hunter to do different tests, but you can have different people doing different tests. Now, let's say this time around we have two different tests. Let me make this larger so we can see. You notice that we have two different tests, both of which are numeric. If I have a situation in which this time around, and this is probably not a good example because we're talking about E. coli or microbial testing, but let's say we're testing for things like bricks or something that's pH or something like that, something that you can adjust while you are in work in process. Then probably what happens is you do some QC test. As a result of that test, you dial in the recipe to make sure that it matches what you want it to do. So let's make fun and see if we could do that here. So we're looking for E. coli to be between 2 and 20. Let's say that in that case it's 30. It failed. Okay. Likewise, now our microbial test is a 50 or something like that. That passed. But let's say this is something like bricks or something, or pH that we can adjust by making changes to the formula. This can then have a message alert that's now sent back to production to say, this failed, you need to tweak the formula. And now I'm sure they know what to do to tweak that formula. So in this case, we'll update this. We had a test that failed. Okay. But now we're going to bring back a different sample. This is our first sample. We're going to duplicate that sample. And when we update that, now we have another sample that we took. Now this time when we test it, what we may say is that our numeric value is something like 10. Oops, I'm sorry. Our numeric value this time around is 10. Okay, that passed. And this time, this stays at 60 or something like that. It passed as well. Now we can update that. Okay, and we can say that we're accepting all of these. I'm going to evaluate this as a QA person. I accept all of that, and the QA is now complete, and we can close the QA order as a result of that. So that ability to dial in something is something that's fairly unique to process industries as well. What if something goes wrong? Oh, there's other things I should take a look at. And thank you. I pre-positioned these so that I can show them to you. We may have other QA things, QC things that happen. For instance, if I'm looking at QC, it's not just QC orders that we have, but we have transfer QCs that we can do. We have inspection plans. We have checklists as well. So let's take a look at an inspection plan here, or a checklist first. I'll maximize that. You'll notice that at any point in the process, again, we may have a checklist before you empty a truck. on receiving. You may check not just documents, but areas in the plant. You may check equipment. You may check anything that you want to do. Those checks, depending on who's doing the checking, may have to be verified by someone else and approved by someone else. And they can happen at a pre-described interval that you want to do. Now, the result of that checklist is just simply yes or no. With inspection plans, though, we may have recorded, let me make this a little smaller. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make this view so it fits the columns. In this case, what we're doing is we're checking a process cell, okay? And we're checking the temperature of that process cell. It might be a refrigerator or something like that. In this case, we're checking temperature or pressure on a pre-described interval. Okay? As a result of that, we get an X bar R chart that says, how is that pressure varying over time? How is that temperature varying over time across the upper control limits and the lower control limits and the nominal value that we want to see? Okay. Now, of course, some things might go wrong along the way. As a result of that, you might be looking at deviations. They could be planned or unplanned, employee suggestions, other different types that you want to see. Okay. They might be in different kinds of stages and statuses. You might want to have to put the batch on hold because of a situation. In this case, we had a problem with a particular batch. Here's our batch, where we burned some of the product because the temperature was too high. We don't quite know what we want to do with this yet, but it was a deviation that happened. It may have happened before. That was important enough that we requested and opened up a non-conformance report associated with this. We all know that the regulatory mandates want you to track anything that's not in conformance. Okay, so here's our non-conformance report. We had a problem with all of this. Where was it? Was it on a particular machine? We could record that. Who was responsible for it? Who was the owner of it? Okay. What was the root cause analysis that we had? The oven was set to the wrong temperature at this case. Okay. Now, what action did we take? We put it on a checklist, and we changed our action here. We might have had many, many attachments if we wanted to. We could attach things all over the place. Now, in this case, in our root cause, we also thought this was important enough. I could have requested a CAPA via this button. I already had done that, so we created this CAPA, Corrective Action, Preventative Action Report. Here it is. Relates back to this nonconformance report or nonconformance reports along the way. It has some investigation that we did. Okay. And it has corrective action that we might have taken. In this case, we updated all the standard operating procedures. Okay. And we changed our checklist and our standard operating procedure. That's been taken to account. Who verified that and when did they do it and what their comments were. And again, attachments, attachments, attachments everywhere. So that whole sequence is all brought together. Now, another thing that's different about production, when we're talking about going through production, is that there are generally fixed capacities in what we're doing, fixed vessel sizes, fixed rates of a filling line or something like that. And you can't put 12 pounds in the 10-pound box. You simply can't do it. So you must schedule using finite scheduling. For that, we have a tool called the Production Scheduling Board. In this case, you see all your process cells, packaging lines, fillers, mixers, etc., whatever that station happens to be that has a certain capacity. Each one of the boxes now is a production order, a batch that's making a particular product. You also see that you can schedule other kinds of things within the factory as well, like cleaning, changeovers, etc., and put those all in. This schedule is fluid. You can get down to the minute to the second, or you can look at it in a macro fashion and see everything that's happening in weeks or months. Doesn't really matter. If you have some things that are overscheduled, one thing on top of the other or something like that, maybe it's something like this, where you're trying to get too much done at the same time, the system's going to say, oh, do you really want to reschedule all the batches? It will, and it will reschedule everything. If you pull something in and it creates a shortage because you don't have the material in time, it gives you a message. Push something out and you miss a customer order, you get a message. If you try to schedule something on a line that you can't do it on, you get a message. You can't do a filling operation on an assembly line. Okay, won't let you do that. Powerful tool. Whenever you click on something up here, okay, it highlights the batch down below where you can now explode that batch and look at all the details of all the ingredients that go into that particular batch. You also have a snapshot of where do we stand on that particular batch and what we're doing on that, and who is it for. If there are other kinds of things that work in different places, you just simply drag and drop and move things around, and it will just reschedule everything for you. So you can make as big an impact on production as possible, utilize your finite capacity as much as possible, and still meet customer demand. You can also then add other schedules if you want to, and play what-if games. What if I did it a different way? What if I ran this particular batch on a different line? What if I moved this here and moved that there? Just drag and drop things around. If you see something that's better, save that back to the system. Everything is updated. You may also want to link batches, start to start, finish to start, so that in this case, I'm going to be making something for something else that I need, and I want to link them together, and they'll flow through work and process together with that relationship. You may also present all of this in form of a calendar, where you look at the calendar and see what's going on day by day by day and what batches are running. And you just have to double-click on the batch to say, what's the detail of the batch, and where does it stand, and all of that. So you can look at the calendars different ways. Powerful tool. Allows you to take advantage of as much as you have and get as much out of the factory, out of production as you possibly can, and not put things into work in process that can't be completed. Now, as we're doing everything, you notice that when I was allocating my material in that batch for seasoning that I was looking at, that what it presented to me were the different lots that we had. So as I allocate those lots or issue those lots, I'm now automatically building on lot control. I'm automatically building on that. And as a result of that, we get lot traceability. So let me open up my lot traceability dashboard here. In this case, we're doing where used. This is for some ground chili pepper, or raw material. We're going to look at it from a given lot standpoint or series of lots. Doesn't matter. We can see this from a grid standpoint, and we can start to explode that and see where all of that went and drill into it from here and see some details that way. But most people, they want to see it in a graphical fashion. So now what I can do is I can explode this and start looking to see where it goes. I can make it big or small. This is all graphical, so you can do whatever you want with it. And then when I see one other thing here, I can drill into that and make this so that it's a little bit easier for you to see. Okay, and then I can see where that went to and what came out of that particular batch. In this case, we shipped 2 things out the door. And of course, I can drill into any one of these things along the way and see the individual batch tickets. I can see the QC that was done. I can see the inventory movements that were done. I can see anything about this that we want to do. Maybe there was something wrong with this, and this is why we did the lot traceability. Maybe it's a mock recall. I can simply say, I want to do a recall letter. As a result of that, it opens up Crystal Reports, which is built in, And now we have lot recall letters. So mock recalls literally take seconds. And of course I could say, as a result of this, I'm going to take this particular lot and explode it and find everything that went into it. Okay? Or talk about all the warehouse transfers were done, or look at all kinds of other things that happened, or move something from one place to another. Powerful information along the way. And of course, this same logic falls into when we have problems with sales. I'm sure none of you ever have had complaints, but we might have a complaint entry here in which I'll see if I can find a good example for you to look at here. Here's some orange juice where the lot had expired and somehow it was delivered. We don't really let that happen, but just as an example. Okay. Obviously, there's an address for this particular customer, Dean Foods. We might have had some investigation that we went into this and looked at. There might be some related documents to this. Okay, nonconformance reports, other things like that. I would see them. I might also, and then there's action taken, etc., whatever you did, follow all of this through. Who's going to own that complaint? We might also see any other related complaints by customer, by item, by lot. Keep your customers happy, and keep the food supply safe. Now, we know what lot is associated with this particular shipment automatically because we recorded that as a part and parcel of delivering it. Okay, you notice it's expired. I can drill into that lot. It automatically opens up my lot traceability, where I could do either an explosion here or where used to see if this went to anybody else. I process all of that. Finds that where that lot was created. I can explode this, and now I know this went to 2 different customers on 2 different deliveries. And I could call up that other customer and see if they're fine. So you see, in many, many ways, this solution is designed from ground up for those people who are in process industries and not discrete manufacturing. We talked about unit and measure conversions. We talked about physical properties from the USDA or Genesis. We talked about the ability to have batches related to batches with different batch sizing, where we had different potencies of ingredients, where we automatically created QC documents along the way that had QA oversight automatically built into it. We talked about how if there's any deviations or nonconformance, in fact, one of the switches in the system is if you have any sort of tests fail, automatically generate a nonconformance report resultant to that. Okay. We talked about how we can effectively schedule with respect to capacity using finite scheduling. And the one thing I didn't show you is that you could schedule forward or backwards, starting with a completion date and go back to where you want to start at it, or start with a start date and say how long it's going to take to make this based on the capacity of that cell. And last but not least, because all of this is happening in unison, we saw lot traceability and mock recalls or actual recalls, if God forbid, and how that ties all in with any sort of issues that we have with the customer. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You take care, John.
All right. Thanks so much, George. I think I should have put this slide up as you gave your summary because this process flow probably graphically depicts everything that George just summarized a second ago. As far as the planning aspect, the execution, and the compliance underneath the manufacturing activities supported by BatchMaster software for food, as well as some costing, inventory management, lot traceability, mobile warehousing capabilities that cross both inbound manufacturing and outbound activities. Let me make that a little bigger. There we go. All right. Well, that concludes our formal presentation. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a little bit about BatchMaster software. We've been 100% focused on industry-specific software solutions. Food and beverage is one of our largest industries that we serve. We've been around for a while, and all of our staff is pretty much committed, both from an operational and a technology standpoint, to developing and delivering these industry-specific solutions. And those solutions we offer are both standalone, they're embedded, and are integrated to a number of leading financials, whether that's SAP Business One, Microsoft Dynamics GP, Sage 100 and 300, as well as QuickBooks. Let's see, how are rugged mobile barcode enabled devices used in your solution? Good question. So let me jump back to this screen because maybe I could address it that way. Obviously, you need to have a barcoded plant warehouse environment, which we certainly can help on generating that. And as far as whether you use RF handhelds or actually smart tablets or smartphones, our mobile device application works on all the above. And
yes, we are pretty device agnostic. We don't really care what device you use.
right. So from a warehousing standpoint, the mobile warehousing deals with receiving, put away, inventory, adjustments and movements, cycle count physical, and then from outbound, you're talking about using mobile for pick, pack, and ship warehouse activities. But it is also used in manufacturing to both pull inventory into WIP and take that out of WIP back into stock or generating that for order fulfillment. There's other activities that can be used with the mobile, and that's obviously things like capturing quality and giving you an electronic batch ticket that actually lets you monitor and control some of the batch ticket or batch job activities. George, anything to add to that?
Electronic weighing sheet that we have, where we integrate with scales, and you can capture the results of the weighing of the product or pre-weighing of ingredients on scales and bring that in to the batch that way.
Okay, super.
Any transaction from the time that you receive raw material to the time finished goods goes out the door can be captured on any sort of a barcode gun in any barcode format that you want, including RFID. Also we have, as John said before, electronic batch ticket that runs on tablets.
Mm-hmm. All right, hopefully that answered your question. Well, again, thanks so much for making time out of your busy schedules today to join us.